that you could join us here tonight because we have a very special guest with us tonight who's going to be talking about an issue that has affected every single one of us, not only across this nation, throughout our state, and within our own hometowns. And I'm talking about, unfortunately, the pandemic of COVID and how it has been changing our lives, how it has been affecting our localities, and what, if anything, can we do about it, and what, if anything, have state and federal governments done about it. But I'm really excited because tonight's guest is somebody who I've known for a couple of years, somebody who is a tremendously friendly individual and is always available whenever I call him on the phone. So I'm very proud to have us join as our guest, the mayor of Waterloo, Iowa, Mayor Quentin Hart. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan. Thank you for your efforts across the state and beyond, man. It's just incredible to see your hard work and your advocacy for people in our community. So thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. Just a quick note to everybody, make sure to join us on newfrontieractionfund.com/live so you can be a part of this program and hear everything that Mayor Hart and I need to talk about tonight. And of course, as always, we'd love a couple donations. You know, just like with everything else out there, you know, those donations help make sure we can do what we're doing. But Mayor Hart, without any further ado, if it's okay with you, I'd like to get into some of the questions that we have for you tonight.
Let's do it.
All right. So my first question for you, Mayor Hart, is that the COVID pandemic has created a healthcare crisis on many levels through our hospitals and around the state, and many of them are at capacity. And there have been several stories of people who've been unable to seek, regular medical health treatment. How has this affected Waterloo, and what steps are you folks taking in Waterloo to deal with this particular crisis?
All right, thank you. And thank you for that question. And I think I heard someone say, can we talk about 2020 as being a curse word now after we've made it through? And, to all the people, to all the families, to everyone around this city, around this state, around this country, the COVID pandemic has pretty much rocked us all and definitely had a huge impact on our daily lives and the way that we live life today. And for those that don't know, Waterloo is probably one of the most diverse communities in the state, one of the largest percentage-wise African-American populations. And because Waterloo is a welcoming community, we have residents and neighbors that are Liberian, from Ghana, Latino, Hispanic, Congolese, Bosnian, Burmese, but such a diverse community. And there's over 40 different languages that are spoken in our Waterloo community schools. And because we have employers, we have a robust and diverse business from manufacturing to healthcare, where a lot of people are actually working at. And this diversity of all sectors have been absolutely impacted. And you see what has occurred nationally to packing plants in local communities. And Waterloo has been hit very hard by that. There's been a disproportionate impact on people of color within our communities, and many hospitals around our nation have reached capacity. But I'll tell you one area where we are truly blessed. We have 3 hospitals. We have 2 private hospitals, and we have a federally funded People's Community Clinic as well, where we're testing, we're able to get some support. And we've also had to take steps. We have community leaders like Dr. Nafisa Ebonye, who is our Black Hawk County Health Director. And we have everybody seeing Sheriff Tony Thompson on the national media talking about the impacts. And so our local leaders have joined together, and our community activists has joined as well to try to put together a COVID response that's inclusive, that includes messaging, culturally and linguistic messaging, from translating documents to over 13 different languages to videos talking about the pandemic and ensuring the needs of our social and economic needs are being met with this crisis. But I'm going to tell you, Al, this COVID has absolutely gripped our community, and it's put us in a situation where we have basically had to do what we could for our local community, regardless of what was done nationally and statewide. And I'm sure we're going to be able to talk about that a little bit later, but we were hit extremely hard and we're still dealing with the repercussions.
Yeah, I know that, Black Hawk County is one of the counties here in the state of Iowa that has one of the highest Black percentages of population. And that particular population has been hit very hard. But, we applaud the efforts of local leaders who have been trying to make sure that they're taking care of their population. And I love, to hear that a response has been inclusive, not only linguistically, but culturally. And I feel that is very important, what we're trying to accomplish.
And Al, I don't want to get the impression that there hasn't been any challenge, because as you've seen by any of the local media, there's no mayor, there's no community person, there's no elected official that would ever want to be on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News talking about how a pandemic has ripped through one of our local businesses and have put us on the front lines for being the hotspot in our country. But we are trying to do what we can collectively, because we know that collective organization helps our body of people collectively as well.
Excellent. So the next question I have for you, Mayor Hart, is that, unfortunately, unemployment rates have reached critical levels, and many small businesses are also unfortunately unable to deal with the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. So I'm wondering, how has this affected some of your small, locally owned businesses in Waterloo? And what could the state or the federal government do more to help these particular situations?
Well, if you take a look at it, when I mentioned a little bit earlier about being a hotspot, we actually had one of our largest employers that probably, estimates over 1,000 or so different cases. Black Hawk County overall is about 120,000 people. And then when you add in the fact that at one point in time, we were looking at hundreds of cases per day, that has an impact not just on that employer and people's ability to work, but it also have an impact on the external abilities for family members. And not everybody works at the plant, but you're talking about family members or spouses that are working in some of our healthcare fields that are taking on other jobs that have small businesses. So not only is it just an impact from that, it has an impact on people going out to our small businesses to purchase things, to go to our restaurants when they were closed, but we were opening up to give go meals. But this has had an impact all the way around on that aspect. Number two, it's had an impact on our minority businesses, as well as you just mentioned, our small locally owned businesses that may not have been suited to start doing things online to be able to meet that demand as well. So all across the board, we've been completely impacted, and especially our small businesses. And, it's unfortunate with some of the business that you're used to going to every day, that's around the corner or downtown, when you go there and they're no longer open, or they had to change how they were delivering services and goods. But it has had a staggering impact on us. And I'm just asking and wanting to make sure that, our state and federal government, I know they had PPP programs and various things, but we also have to make sure that the businesses that are vibrant, that are actual businesses that may not fit in some of those categories, are able to get services too. If you're working with a bank, or you've opened up that business with your own dollars to start off, you may not have that initial connection to the bank. So we've been trying to reach out and work with SBA, Jane Armstrong, and trying to reach out to some of our other partners to have that conversation about how can we serve our state, how can the state and federal be more supportive of our local businesses.
Yeah, that's critically important. Where a national company like Walmart, not meaning to drop any names, has multiple locations throughout the company to help with their income stream. When you've got somebody who owns a business and just lives down the block, and like you said, open that with their own money, that's much harder for them to be able to recover from some of the economic stress that they're seeing right now.
Right. Sometimes when you take a look at the trends from some of the larger companies, like you just mentioned, a place like Waterloo or a smaller Midwestern community like Waterloo would be a prime location for them to close down businesses or close down retail. So even in some of these larger companies. So the impact that they've had nationally has an impact on us locally by having some of those chains that are no longer open, not having the ability to have proper clothing and those types of things, or dress clothes. It's been a challenge here, and we've been a target. So it'd be great for the federal government to help give us some tools to be able to keep some of these businesses within our local community as well.
Yeah, I know that I myself would personally be heartbroken to see a place like Morgues. That is my favorite absolute spot to come and get breakfast in Waterloo, and I would be, just torn to pieces to see that leave.
Morris is still there, still moving forward.
That's good to hear. Well, the next question I have for you, Mayor Hart, is that the Trump administration's response. Well, actually, I should start off that there has been a mixture of both praise and criticism on the state's response, led by Governor Kim Reynolds. And I'm wondering, what is your opinion of the Reynolds response, and what do you think could have been done differently in order to help some of our small local municipalities?
Well, I'll say first and foremost, as an elected official, we take an oath to protect Iowans, to protect those in Waterloo or whatever community that you come from. And as the governor, it's all of Iowa that you need to be able to protect. And I'll say where there has been a challenge has been the ability to engage with elected local officials to address the individual unique needs within their cities, because effective communication needs to occur. And there also needs to be a uniformity in communication as well. And especially when there's an outbreak that has made national news, that is not just rocked this country, but rocked the entire world. And it would have been great for me to have received a call from the governor asking directly what more can help, instead of having to send out an email to one of our state representatives stating a very direct email stating about what we were facing back in March and April with one of our companies, because the leader needs to be proactive in understanding the needs of the community, whether you're at the local level or whether you're at the state level, and especially on the local level, when the people, we're talking about workforce, but our friends, these are our relatives, these are our neighbors, and especially when they're becoming sick, and especially when they're dying. And I just used a quote from Dr. King: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we were placed in a position, and still in that same position, where we needed to take care of this and work as a local community to try to come up with solutions. So we formulated our emergency operations center and activated that, where our local leadership, from Supervisor Timmy Brown Powers and Supervisor Roz Smith, to our board of supervisors, to some of the local mayors and council and our health professionals, where we had to come together and say, listen, we need to be unified, if no one else, about the needs that are taking place within our local community. And yes, our public health director had communication with Iowa Department of Public Health, but
Mhm.
what it goes down to is us advocating for the people within our local communities that we needed to. And so we had the EOC. We put together a mask mandate. And Al, you wouldn't believe the negative criticism that come from people, that come from state officials, when we were just merely trying to slow the spread of this virus. But we did what we needed to do to take all precautions. And so that's the oath that I took to protect and public health, public safety. That's the oath I took to try to do that. So, we even got to the point where even our local public health we're having conversations with our local businesses, right? Because a mask mandate does not mean you have a mayor or a city councilman that is trying to slow and stop business. That doesn't help our local community. But what it does say that based upon empirical scientific evidence or even common sense, that when you go to a doctor and a doctor does your surgery, they have on a mask and they have on
Right.
protective gear. And so just in common sense or empirical data, we had to go all those steps that we needed to do on a local level. And I thought that there was an overreach from the state government to try to stop what local communities were doing, right, to be able to protect our communities. We hear you can't put a mask mandate, you can't close a business down. Darn it, if that business is not doing what they're supposed to, and I see my friends and families and members of this community getting sick, then it's up to us to take on that challenge and that charge. And that was one of the best things that came out of this, was a direct communication line to those businesses and the ability to be able to work with them to try to measures in place to protect our citizens. And so it's not anti-business, it's pro-business, it's pro-community, it's pro-workforce. And that means you have to be pro-public health.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
my 1-minute answer.
No, that's all right. You had a statement in there when you said common sense, and it throws me back to something that Benjamin Franklin once said a long time ago, is that common sense is not so common. But
Right.
I was actually speaking with a young lady who was a nurse in one of your neighboring counties, and she was literally in tears with me over the phone, talking about how people were not, going out and wearing masks and taking this seriously. And if they could see the numbers of people in the hospital, and they could see the numbers of people who are not only dying from this, but also the numbers of people who then, wind up with long haulers and continue to experience symptoms, long after they've been hospitalized for COVID. I have my own daughter who has that. And if people could understand that, I think that wearing a mask would be no question whatsoever.
Right.
Realize that is the most important thing that they can do. And it's the cheapest solution. It's the easiest solution.
Right.
Just put on a mask.
And, I had been in a situation where I had to take a relative, my mom, to the ER, not knowing my mom had COVID at the time, right? We literally sat in the waiting room probably 3 to 4 hours to be able to see. And I put up a post on Facebook, thanking all of our healthcare people, those that are on the front line. Our fire department runs our ambulatory service, and it is just this time. If there's one thing to take away from 2020, is the people that are working out there every day on the front lines to try to make a difference in our lives, and the things that we take for granted. I can work from home, right, Al? You can work from, we can do those things. We've been blessed in that manner. but the folks that are in the stores and in the grocery stores and how they've been impacted, that is incredible to see our essential workers and people that are on the front lines every day, making sure we have all the things that we have to help us be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a daughter who works at a big box retailer, and sometimes when I go to visit her at work, or sometimes drop off to get something there, when I see people walk in and out without masks, I'm maybe a little bit more aggressive. I just kind of want to walk up with this big hand and give them a smack across the face and be like, "What are you doing? Put
Right.
that on." You know. But just remember, to all the folks out there, once again, this is New Frontier Action Fund. Please go to us at newfrontieraction.com. Make sure you donate so we can continue to have programs like this. But so I started getting into this question before, and I do apologize because I'm an old football player, so sometimes I'm a little edgy. I want to jump at stuff. But the Trump administration's response to this pandemic has been, well, frankly, awful in every sense of the word. And and in many cases has been seen to inhibit the abilities of local governments. If you had a chance to advise our incoming administration, what suggestions would you have for them to make sure that they were actually helping, places like Waterloo?
Do we have to talk about just do we have to, I would probably say the social and economic support in communities like Waterloo is so important. If you think about it, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very robust workforce, and we had a plant. Our plant feeds, I know, millions of people throughout this country and throughout this world. And if they were to get sick, then that doesn't happen. So it's important that they take a look at the overall livelihood of people in our local communities, so that we don't disregard economic development or how it impacts all of us. So investment with economic development also helps to improve the social and economic well-being of our community. Number two, we have to make sure that we don't politicize public health and COVID-19, because if you're this party or you're that party, if you wear a mask, if you don't wear a mask, then it has become so polarizing today. And the thing that I've been trying to tell people, and people here locally have been telling that, is that to be pro-business is to be pro-workforce, is to be pro-public health. All of those work hand in hand with one another. And so we have to take a look at how we're investing socially and economically in the lives of the people that are on our front lines within our communities, to help them be successful, and make sure that since they made this ultimate sacrifice and showing up in very extreme conditions, that we don't forget to invest in them and invest in their livelihoods.
No, I completely agree. When we think about the majority of the people out there who are employed, a lot of people are employed more at locally owned businesses than some of your big box retailers. I live next to a place called Valley Junction here in West Des Moines. It's all small, locally owned shops. Many of the people who own those shops live within a couple blocks of where that shop actually is. And so that's where, investment needs to go. That's where, our concentration on lending assistance needs to go, in my personal opinion.
Right.
And I just want to get your feedback on that. I'm sorry, Mayor Hart.
Well, no, you're fine. Because I was, I think, I'll be able to talk a little bit later, but we'll do it now. But so one of the things, I had the opportunity to be on a call with the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Yeah, I did it. And it was to talk about the impacts on, minority and women businesses, right? And if you take a look at it, these businesses, there's a huge percentage of minority businesses and African American owned businesses that have been higher proportionately impacted by COVID based upon the service or the good they provide. You're talking about human service industries where we provide a service and have been tremendously impacted. And then there was even a study that talked about that one African American business versus seven white businesses during their first year of operations receive some type of loan to help them be successful, right? And then you that with the fact when you take a look at these businesses, African American businesses are African American and Latino businesses are majority considered at risk businesses, right? And
That's right.
so the layers have been compounded, you know, multi on minority and small businesses. From the cards were already stacked against them. And so when we take a look at our federal government, when we take a look at the financial hardships, when we take a look at all those things, we have to create new models and new funding structures that are going to be able to help these businesses. And PPP is significant and well needed. But there's other levels that people a lot smarter than me need to come up with so we can make sure that there's some direct funding that's going to these local businesses. And it's just troubling to see. I'm very thankful for the support that people are giving. Don't get me wrong. And we need it, but we have to come up with new solutions to solve problems that were created yesterday. Because if we have that same mindset, we're not going to be successful in saving. And you hear about the proportions of hundreds of thousands of small businesses that are not going to survive, that have not survived. And we just need to make sure that there's an economic plan that actually reaches people, right? Reaches people. And so when you're talking about a city like Waterloo, and I keep saying my hometown, this is where I'm at, we talk about the fact that we have bared the brunt, and other places where you have packing plants, other places where you've had significant outbreak, so that we can make sure that we feed the rest of this country, and making sure that when the Defense Act is put in place, that takes away the liability that businesses have for the protection of their people, it puts us at a double and a triple loss, right? So very glad for all the support. We need it, but we have to take a look at the models that we are utilizing to support Midwestern communities and communities throughout this entire country with regards to the investment back into our communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about those small businesses, they have a hard time financially getting started to begin with to sustain. And now with the, added economic burdens that COVID has placed on people, it becomes almost untenable. And that actually goes directly into my next question. We've had a new COVID relief package that has been approved and is now in the works of being sent out to folks. But I'm just wondering if you feel that provisions that are in that package really are doing enough to help, local municipalities, because I know many places are stretched to the economic limit trying to fight this thing already. Right. And so has that economic package, do you believe, has it really offered enough to be able to help, municipalities like Waterloo or other locations to handle the economic stress that they've had to bear during this pandemic?
Well, it's been an extremely tough time, as you mentioned. And I'll just tell you, first, let's talk about the people, right? And the earlier round gave, double as much money as this round of CARES money has given. And I think there's been a lot of conversation, and it's become a political football at the time about whether it's $600, whether it's $1,200, whether it's $2,000. And so that's been a challenge, because people need that support and those resources. So whatever we can do now, and whatever we can do with the new administration, which we may talk about a little bit later, we have to make sure that we look out for the least of these within our community. Secondly, the first CARES Act, there were, I think, 34 to 36 cities that received direct funding, and those cities were over 500,000 in population, right? And I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm not pitting large versus small versus rural. I'm not doing that. But that was direct support that went to local communities. Well, how many cities in the state of Iowa have over 500,000 people in it?
None.
I'm waiting. If there's someone on the chat that can tell me, there's not, right? So we have to take a look at some of the funding models. And there's cities out there because there's a loss of incredible revenues, right? And so there's been some assistance, whether it is to give directly to public safety and some of their needs, whether it is to give some dollars for those that have been working, doubling in overtime in COVID. Our community developments through the entitlement programs have received dollars, but there's not really been a mechanism to help us rebuild the losses in revenues. At one point, we postponed road projects, right? To ensure that we would have enough revenue through some of our funding streams to be able to complete those projects. And there's some cities that actually are good financial cities that had to struggle with some of those losses of revenue. But as of this day yet, and I may be wrong, but I haven't seen any direct funding to backfill some of those losses in revenue. And then, it is a challenge all the way around. So I am just, I'm hoping now and coming forth that there's some more direct revenue to people, our neighbors and family members, but also to local governments.
Yeah, I mean, it has been such a deep blow on so many levels, personal level, the local government's level. But hey, I just want to take a second to remind you guys once again to check out newfrontieraction.com and donate so we can keep giving you programs like this. And also check out our Facebook page at New Frontier Action so that you can see my wonderful, lovely face again, and even more wonderful Quentin Hart, who will also be appearing next week on GQ Magazine and Jet. So just check it out too. He's going to be showing up there soon.
Yeah. What
is a centerpiece?
Generally Quentin.
Yes, it will be now. It will be now.
Right.
So, one of the other questions I have for you is that, Iowa's first district now has a new congressional representative. And I'm wondering if, Congresswoman Ashley Hinton has reached out to you for the concerns and needs of Waterloo, or is there a plan set in the future to meet? And, if there is a meeting, what type of things would you express to her that you would like to see her working for her, constituents in the first district in order to be able to help?
And congratulations to Congresswoman Hinton. She and I have not had an opportunity to dialogue about the challenges that we're facing on a local level. I am hoping one day we have our Cedar Valley Coalition, and I'm hoping one day to be able to have that conversation, hopefully in the near future as well. I've had conversations with the Congresswoman Finkenauer about some of the chinches we faced, and with her staff as well. But if I had an opportunity to talk with Congresswoman Hinton, I'd probably talk about some of the same things, and that is, taking a look at direct funding to cities, to taking a look at some of the losses of revenue that we've suffered. I would talk about some of the social and economic investment to some of the outstanding workers within her local community that were on the front line, that have paid the price to make sure that the rest of this country and the rest of this world is being fed on their meat packing and the other areas that we have given to. I talk about small businesses. I talk about some of the statistics that I just mentioned a little bit earlier about minority women businesses and making sure that we create formulas and scenarios to help them be successful. I talk about the protection of workers, right? That's absolutely
Mhm.
important because you can't have strong production if you don't have healthy workers. And that is not an anti-farming or ag perspective, because I believe that all of this works hand in hand with one another. And we know that Iowa has one of the strongest agri sectors ever
Mhm.
in the history of this world, that I like to claim on Iowa. And the better we can work together, the better off we'll do to making sure that Iowans are taken care of in a real special way, like we deserve to be.
Mhm. No, I mean you're absolutely correct. And I love some of the things that you've mentioned here. The fact that when we talk about our frontline workers, we need to think about how do we do things differently, and the fact that some of us do have the privilege to work from home right now. I'm sitting in my sunroom in front of my fireplace with my big picture from the Garden of the Gods in Colorado. I don't know if anybody can see that, but there are so many people who don't have that capability. People working at McDonald's and Burger King, people who are working for our post offices, people who are working at our grocery stores. Some people don't think about it, but their lives are literally being put on the line so
Right.
that we can go out and get food, so that we can receive our mail, so that we are able to have trash pickup. And, we have to think differently about how we're doing things,
Right.
making sure that we're taking care of those individuals. Because being a former safety administrator myself, I know the healthier your workers are, the happier they are, and the more productive you are.
It all goes. It's all succinct. So that's a very important point.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so another question I had for you is that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but, I would really be kicking myself if I didn't mention this. Um, Trump has often mocked the use of masks. And as we see, you know, really kind of advocating for the use of masks by the Reynolds administration was not, a priority to begin with. And yet it is one of the easiest, cheapest, simplest ways to make sure that we can keep people healthy. If you were able to advise either our, upcoming new administration that's going to be coming in, or, advise the Reynolds administration, what would you tell them about masks? What would you be saying to them about masks that would make things better for your community there in Waterloo and for other municipalities, in fact?
Well, it would be the same thing I've already said to directly, and that is, and that was back during March and April when we were talking about some type of stay at home and trying to encourage residents to stay safe at home, right? So that we would be able to limit the impacts we may have on our hospitals and keep things functioning a little bit longer before we had to shut things down. Number two would be all of us, the governor, the legislative body, and that is we all need to model this behavior and practice what we preach, right? And as a leader, if we say that masks are a good thing, then we also need to do it. When we are lukewarm, then that sends the wrong message to people about where we actually stand at on staying at home initiatives or about wearing masks. And correct me if I'm wrong, but even right now, we do have some mask mandates now, but I mean, the legislative session, are they even requiring face mask as well while they're in session? And so the evidence is that masks are a critical component of all the comprehensive mitigation strategies. Listen to the science as well, because there's so much misinformation that's being pumped out into our local community, and we need to make sure that we are help that information to be improved and improve on accurate data, because that
Mhm.
will all of us. And some states, just even locally, some states, such as Iowa, have received less vaccines. And then
Mhm.
even week in my local community, I think we received about 300 doses, which is not for a city our size with a manufacturing base that I mentioned a little bit earlier, robust manufacturing base that has helped to bless to be able to feed people throughout this country and our healthcare facilities and our public safety. But that's not enough for us to be able to move our local community to even close near moving to part B of the vaccination. So yeah, we're challenged, and our local Black Hawk County Public Health Department, which is our unified voice, are communicating those things directly on the state level. But I would say let's model what we teach.
Mhm. Yeah, we only got time for one more question, but I will just say, I was up there personally for the first day of session and saw a lot of anti-maskers up there protesting. They had no masks on. They were closely bunched together. And unfortunately, I did see, all of our Democratic representatives with masks on. But I did see some folks, I ain't going to mention any names, but they did not have their masks on. And when you say modeling the type of behavior we want to see from the public, that is very important.
Absolutely.
Before I get to our last question, I'll say once again, make sure you check out New Frontier Action Fund. Make sure that you donate so that we can keep up with our good work. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, as well, so you can see the wonderful visage of Mayor Quentin Hart, star of many upcoming movies. So make sure you look at that as well in your local theater. I'll bring it down to one last question for you, Mayor Hart, and this might be a little bit more personal. So I'm wondering, this has been an extraordinarily stressful time for many of us. And what I'm wondering is, how has this pandemic affected you personally? And how has it also affected your thought process on how government should work? Because I know you and I have talked before in the year, and this has been a grind. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you trying to bring tears to my eyes with this conversation. I have had, my personal family has been incredibly impacted. My local community has been impacted. And, to look up one day and see your community, this Midwestern community, as the hotspot for the entire country, really is something that I never thought would possibly happen. So it's been extremely tough. I've had COVID myself, my parents, and my heart goes out to everyone that's been impacted. So on a personal level, I've seen it as mayor. I've seen it, but I think one of the messages that I really want to get to, and I've had some strong comments today, but uniformity and having people united is exactly what we need, because our issues are very complex right now. And not only is there polarization on the national levels, we see it sometimes within our local communities and within our state. And it doesn't help because things are so complex. But one of the things I tried to do, and I'm trying, is that being a leader, I don't want to just be known as the first Black mayor or first African American mayor of the city of Waterloo. I've always wanted to be known as the best mayor of Waterloo. And being the best mayor of Waterloo is taking a look at the individual needs of our overall community and making sure that we fight and advocate for all the things they need. And I believe at some point, all of our locally elected officials believe that it's not just about us and our personal walk, but it's about how we can work together to be able to solve these problems. And so it's always been about what can be is best for Waterloo and for its citizens, and understanding it's complex. Bipartisanism as I use the ism, is probably one of our ways that we'll be able to deal with this pandemic. And bipartisan is giving us some of the greatest success that we've had as a local community, is that we had as a state and as a country. And I do think we're a strong community, but I believe that we are somewhat losing that fight and that struggle nowadays. And it may not be apparent, but it's driving us apart. And we need to be in the role and the mood and the fight of empowering our people and supporting our legislators and our Congress people that are willing to step across that aisle and partner with one another. So it's about the people, and it's about our ability to be able to work with one another.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, I mean, when it comes to something like a pothole, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're left or right, the pothole is a nuisance and it's got to be taken care of. And, you know, we got to make sure that it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're sitting on. You know, this pandemic is, you know, more than a nuisance. So it should take us to realize, you know, we all need to work together. Well, Mayor Hart, thank you so much for coming on and joining us here. I hope people, you know, are able to enjoy you in your new roles, the new James Bond coming out in theaters. You know, and I'm just happy to have you here. And I'm looking forward to coming up to Waterloo and seeing you hopefully sometime soon in the next few months. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, New Frontier. And thank you, Al, and all of your partners for bringing this type of information to people as well. And I look forward to taking you over to morgues.
All right. That sounds great, because they have pancakes that are literally as big as my chest. Those things are just unbelievable. But I will say, ladies and gentlemen, you know, make sure that you log in to New Frontier action.com. Make sure you check us on Facebook, and make sure you donate, because we have more really great programming that's going to be coming up throughout this month. You know, on Monday, January 25th at 7:00 p.m., we have a wonderful special guest coming up. We're going to have DNC Vice Chair Michael Blake will be joining us. So you know you want to come in and be a part of that. So make sure you donate so we can keep that programming up. On Wednesday, February 3rd at 7 p.m., we're going to have California Congressman and my good friend Ro Khanna will be joining us. And one of the things that I'm most looking forward to is that on Thursday, January 21st at 7:00, we will be having a birthday comedy roast of the Reverend Rob Johnson. You have got to make sure that you tune in for that one. Please make sure that you donate so we can keep these programs up. And make sure you donate as well, because in my past year working with New Frontier Action and with No Justice, No Peace, we have been all around the state of Iowa registering voters, educating voters, making sure that individuals understand the fight that we have still going on for racial equity and social justice. And we cannot do that, ladies and gentlemen, without your support. And I, for one, feel that there is still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. And I can do that work with your support. So please donate. Please join us for these upcoming programs. And I'm going to say thank you to all for joining us. And I will also say to you, you know what? You can join us in this fight as well. Don't just donate, but figure out how you can make sure that you join individuals like myself and the good Reverend Rob Johnson on how you can volunteer in order to make a better state, a better nation, and a better community that we can all be proud of again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to see you again coming soon. Good night from New Frontier Action, and I hope to see you out there. Thank you very much.